Yeah. Hello, everybody. E here. Welcome to another From the Desk, but this time we're doing something completely different. We are doing From the Desk live, and I am here with my special guest, Lane Talbot. Sorry. Say hello, Lane.
Hi, y'all.
So what we're going to be doing is I'm going to be asking Lane 5 questions, and it's going to be a very basic template. I'm going to ask everybody these same questions, and they can answer however they like. I'm going to be doing prolific authors and authors just starting out, or authors with absolutely no publishing experience whatsoever. Like I said, again, I'm going to be using the same template, but once we are done with those 5 questions, I might ask some follow-up questions, but once we're done with that, what we're going to do is I'll open it up to anybody who might be in the chat, but until that point, the questions will be closed in the comment section, and I won't be reading the comments. I'll try to give as many reminders as possible. There are 5 people watching. So if any of you guys who are in here right now want to tell people that are coming in, I'd appreciate it. Let them know that I won't be answering questions until we get these 5 questions out of the way. So, Lane, are you ready to go?
Let's do it.
All right. So the first one is, have you been published, or are you working on being published?
So I've got 2 novellas that are out, and I've placed about a dozen pieces of short fiction at journals kind of like up and down the chain. I think one of the credentials that I'm proud of is I actually got a notable story in Best American Mystery Stories 2016. And that was kind of a white whale that I've been chasing. That's an anthology that I read every year. So someday I'll land a story in that anthology, I tell myself. But I did get a notable. So that was one that I was quite proud of. And then in terms of a novel, yeah, I'm actively, I just finished a novel draft recently, draft like 1 million probably. So I'm actively hawking that. And yeah, we'll see. But yeah, I've been writing for a long time. Love to read, love to write. It's, the main thing that I do with my time. It's the main thing that I think about. It's the thing that I love, and I don't see that ever changing.
Very cool. I do have a follow-up question for that one. I want people to say, we were talking before we started. Sorry, everybody. We were talking behind your backs. Anyways, but I do want you to tell the folks about your story in Thuglit, because just because I was so interested in it. I think my followers will be interested in it also. Unfortunately, Lane has told me that Thuglit is no longer in business, but I would like you guys to hear this setup, because I think it's great.
Yeah, thank you. So Thuglit was a journal founded and edited by a guy named Todd Robinson, who's around. He's on Twitter. He's hilarious. He's great. He's out of New York. And it was a real labor of love for him. You can still pick up issues, and it's basically just like a pulp thriller magazine. And the stories in it they were punchy, and they were violent, and they were crude, and they were literary, and they were just I ate them up. They were my favorite. It's probably my favorite regular anthology that I read. And I was able to place a story in that I think it was like 2017. And the premise of the story is a retired businesswoman who lives in semi-rural Indiana, kind of like in her emeritus years. She gets kidnapped from her home and stuffed into the trunk of her car and driven away. And so probably the first half of the story occurs in the trunk of the car, and it's her just doing the calculus in her head, like, who have I offended so that this calamity has befallen me? And so it's kind of it's a mind game, right? It's a suspense story with her trying to solve the mystery of her own kidnapping with extremely limited information. And then at the halfway point, things change, and then things are revealed, and the story culminates. And that was actually based on just a snippet of an article that I read one time, where something very similar happened. A woman was kidnapped out of her home, put into the trunk of her car, and the reason that they were able actually to rescue the woman was because the kidnappers stopped at a McDonald's. So wow. Like that incident, like the license plate was captured and they were able to, that was the piece of forensics that enabled her eventual rescue. And my story plays out quite differently. But the thing that struck me about that was just like, first of all, like, don't be a criminal. That's a bad idea. But also, like, don't be a criminal if you're just dumb. Like, if like everybody knows like what your intelligence level is.
That's a good point. That's a real good point.
It's like, okay, like there are things I'm not smart enough to do. And the consequences of failing at most jobs is pretty limited, but the consequences of failing at being a criminal are quite severe. So like, maybe don't choose that career path.
I have a tendency to say, I wanted to be a brain surgeon when I was younger. That's something I wanted to fool around in people's heads, but my hands shake. So there's no way in hell I was going to waste all that money going to school to be a brain surgeon, knowing I wouldn't be able to do the basics of the job. So,
but as a writer, now you fool around in people's heads.
Yes, I do it. What is it? Not in theory, something like that. Anyways, so moving on, we have the second question. What are you currently working on?
Yeah. So I mentioned the novel draft, which I recently finished, and that's a thing that I've been working on very diligently for too long. So I needed a break, and while I'm kind of letting the fiction engine refill, I'm actually working on blogging, which is new to me. And we were talking before this, and I'm very impressed with the platform that you built and engaging with the audience and all of this. Like clearly, this is something that I should have initiated for myself long ago. I just did not. And so recently I've published a couple of blog posts on my website and also on Medium. And blogging is very distinct from fiction writing in my experience. Like in fiction writing, I feel quite comfortable. Like I feel at home. Like I know what I'm trying to do. Whether I'm doing it successfully or not is not for me to judge, but I know what I'm trying to do. With blogging, I feel quite differently because I'm not trying to enact a piece of crafted work necessarily. It's much more coming from me, the person, rather than me, the author. And so that's the thing that I've been grappling with because, and I'm sure that anyone who's listening to this has far more facility with blogging than I do. My blogging credentials are very thin, but what I've tried what I've been grappling with is it's like, okay, if I am a writer, if I'm somebody who's very comfortable with fiction and that's what I practice, like what business do I have channeling opinions about anything out into the world? Like my strong opinions are typically reserved for fiction. Like my strong opinions are reserved for characters who don't exist, for whom things happen that didn't actually happen, right? Like that's where my mind occupies most of its time. And so with blogging, it was like, well, what do I have to talk about? And what I have decided, rightly or wrongly, is that I'm just going to talk about the things that I love and the things that I think about all the time anyway.
That's the best way to go about blogging, I think.
Great. Well, yeah, no, that's good validation to hear from you because that's probably all I'm capable of. Like I don't think that I'm going to be, issuing any like stunning indictments on any topics that I don't have direct experience with. But the topics that I do have direct experience with are profoundly nerdy. Like I love movies and video games and comic books and novels and so like
same here.
Yeah,
same
right?
here.
And like that's the stuff that you and I are thinking about 99% of the time anyway. So that's probably what I should be talking about from a blogger's perspective. So that's what I've started doing. And I love X-Men. Like any conversation I'm having out in the real world is probably just cover for me thinking about X-Men cartoons from the 90s. That's all I'm doing. And so I've been reviewing X-Men, classic X-Men comic books. Right now, I think I'm up to like probably issue 6. I've read more than that, but I've reviewed up to issue 6. And I've also written about just movies that I like and video games that I like. And it's been really fun for me because it kind of takes that fandom to like a more of like a conversational level.
Yes.
And so like rather than me just being like, oh, I love Tomb Raider, I just want to talk about Tomb Raider to myself. Blogging is a really great way for me to try to like organize like what my thoughts are around that and try to can I come up with a cogent argument about why this is an art form that I love, that why this thing deserves to exist? And then the turnaround time for it is instant. You just put it on the internet, and then people can tell you if you're right or wrong, and you can kind of engage their experience and deepen it. And so anyway, that's been a really fascinating experience for me. I hope I keep it up. I hope I keep going, and I hope I learn more. I hope I learn how to do it. But the writing has been really fun. So
the learning curve for putting yourself out there as a blogger, as whether it be daily, monthly, yearly, whatever, I think is just as important as, you know, writing fiction. You're connecting with people, and that's important.
Yeah.
Whether it be fiction or whether it be you just nerding out over X-Men, because the whole reason I started this channel, other than to kind of repair a reputation, it was more about, you know, connecting with people who like the same thing, and even people who don't like the same things as me. I would say half of my following disagrees with me the majority of the time, and I appreciate that. You know, I like seeing people's opinions, and as long as you're respectful, I'll be respectful back. But yeah, man, there's nothing like it. You can't. It's not even. And I'm talking about the internet in general. You know, you go out and you never know if you're going to bump into somebody that you get along with, whether or not you go out to a bar or to a reading or whatever it might be. You never know if you're going to bump into someone you get along with. But on the internet, you can connect with damn near anyone.
Yeah.
And the best part about the internet is, you know, it's like a open mic night. You're all probably going to be musicians, you know, and you're going to get together, and that's I think that's one of the best parts about this this thing we call the internet, is that we can, and I'm sorry for the hum, everybody. You guys know that the AC, it was 104 when I got out here, but I think it's important, and I think blogging is important, reviewing, all the stuff that people do for free here on the internet to connect with other people.
Yeah.
Just to let my my viewers know, I'm not reading chat or answering any questions until we get done with the 5 questions that I'm going to be asking Lane. And once I do get done with those 5 questions, we will open up the comments, the questions from you guys if you have any questions. So on to question number 3, which is, what is your process for starting a new piece? And I kind of want to expand on that. Me and Lane talked a little bit before we started this. I kind of want to expand on that, not just fiction. What spurs you, makes you want to write a blog post? Just give me everything you want to say on that subject.
Yeah. No, I was looking forward to this question. This is one of my favorite things to think about, because I don't know the answer. It changes all the time, I feel. But I think one thing that's been pretty consistent for me is that there's an inciting thought, or there's an inciting element that hits my radar. I'll start with fiction, and there's an example that I wanted to bring up, and this is from my most recently placed short story, and it takes place in the Pacific Northwest. I live in the Midwest. I'm from here, and this was a couple of years ago. I had a business trip in the Pacific Northwest. It was a very short amount of time, and I was going to a weird place, that was very rural and very remote, and it was also coastal. And so there was this private length of beach, like 12 miles of beach in like the extreme northwestern edge of the United States. And I got a little bit of time to myself. And so I went and drove out and saw this beach. And I was standing on a cliff, and it was storming, but it was not quite raining, just misting, and the waves were crashing, and you couldn't really tell what was water and what was fog and what was sky. And it was just one of those moments where it was just like, you feel like you're looking at this like really vivid, special thing. It was like Tolkien. And I don't mean that like to be cheesy. Like, that's how I felt. It's like, oh my gosh, like this is like this ethereal like sight that like I'm very like privileged to be able to see right now. And then I got back in the rental car, was driving back to the hotel. And as I'm driving, I start seeing these signs for tsunami evacuation routes, which is striking because, again, I'm from the Midwest. Tsunamis are not things that I think about.
We have hurricane evacuation routes here in the South also, so I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like the fact that that's there. It's like, okay, like this is going to eventuate. Like it's there for a reason. And it was. I talked to a guy that I was working with, and he was from the area, and he was like, yeah, well, we're near a thing called the Cascadia Subduction Zone, which basically creates this like funnel for when an earthquake strikes, and an earthquake will strike. It strikes every 500 years off the coast, however many miles. It creates this funnel where a tsunami will just come and it will just wipe out everything that's in its path. And like they know it's going to happen. It's incredible. And so I was like, wow. Okay, when was the last one of those? And he was like, oh, 1700. And it's like, okay, so you're due. It's probably not going to happen while I'm here, but it's coming. And so anyway, so I was just
actually one question. Yeah. It's that specific, like every 500 years on average. Okay, I got you.
And they've done the math backwards, and like I looked it up afterwards. And I was like, really? And it's like, yeah, okay, like sure enough, like there's literature on this.
It's crazy. Why would anybody live in that area? It's to know. Oh, I guess 500 years is a long ass time. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. But yeah, just knowing that at any moment, everything. I mean, I live in the South, but I don't live down on the coast because I know the hurricane's eventually going to come and tear all my crap up. Right. It's just questions like that. Like we're talking about the instigation of a story idea or whatever, and it's that kind of thing that gets the juices going, man. You start thinking. Anyways, continue on.
No. Thank you for pulling me back on track. You're 100% right. It's that's exactly what it is. It's like it's one thing like that, and in my case, like I know, okay, I want to sit down and I want to write about that. Now, for me, a setting is not enough to generate a story, and a premise is not enough to generate a story. I think a character can be enough, just talking about myself here. But in those instances, when you have something special like that, when you're like, all right, this is sticking with me, I've got to use this in some way. What I find is that in my non-writing life, like just walking around, having conversations, absorbing, traveling, whatever, I'm just accruing. Like I'm just doing research. It's like a subroutine. And like I know that I'm probably going to process and use this. I'll synthesize whatever the input is and use it at some point, but I don't know what it is. And when you get something like that, that tends to unlock story. And it's like, okay, so these other things that I've been thinking about or that I've observed or whatever, like I never knew how they were going to fit together, but I've got this place and like, oh, maybe I should take this thought and take this thought and these other things that I've been thinking about for years or whatever. And it just kind of all gets funneled into a draft, and then you work through it. And you do the work. But anyway, that's a very long-winded way of saying, typically there's an agent. Typically, in my experience, there's an inciting element. And it's got to be exciting enough for me to want to commit to it over weeks, months, maybe years.
For me, you hit on something very important to me, and that's character. I look for, when I'm reading, character is number one for me. I can't read Adam Neville's, The Worm, because there's no characters in the book. It doesn't interest me whatsoever. Not that, Aaron Neville's not a good writer. I'm not saying that at all, but that just doesn't interest me because as soon as you tell me no characters, my brain shuts down. I don't care. But I'm the same way when I write also. If I don't have a very strong voice of a character, and I'm a pantser, I have no idea what I'm going to write from one day to another. I just come out, sit down, and sometimes a character introduces themselves in full, and I have to chop that up and sprinkle it out because I can't start with a 20-page info dump with this person's entire history. So I'll come out here, and sometimes I have to chop up like that. But it always comes down to character. If I don't have a strong character voice, then that it's going in the bin or into the cyber bin, recycle bin, whatever you want to call it. But I think character is that I have three things that I look for. Anybody who's watched my videos knows this, so I'm preaching to the choir as far as the comments section goes. But it's character, pacing, and dread. Even if it's like a romance, if I'm sitting there, I have to feel some kind of dread. I have to feel like something is going to go wrong. I don't know why I need that, but I need that. But it's in that order also: character, pacing, dread. I have to have a character that I can at least understand. If I don't like them, that's fine, but I have to understand their motivations for being unlikable. Well, not motivations for being unlikable, but motivations for them being the way that they are that makes me not like them. And then pacing, man, it's got to move. It can be verbose, it can be beautiful modern language, but the pacing's second important, and then the very last one, I got to have that dread. But when you said it can't just be a place, it can't be just an incident, but it can just be a character. I think that's I like that.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Sorry. Well, I was just going to say, you're speaking my language, because I think for me, like, I don't believe that I know a lot. Like, I believe that as a writer, like, I can intuit certain things, and sometimes they work. But one of the few things that I think that I know about writing is that character is almost always the answer. Whatever the issue is, whatever I'm struggling with, like, it's probably not going to be solved by plot. It's probably not going to be solved by, like, great prose or anything like that. But I will turn to character, and that's the vein that I'll mine. And it's not because I know that or because I discovered that. It's because that's what I see in the writing that I love. That's consistent across every piece of literature that's ever truly spoken to me. Like, I think this is way off topic, but there's a guy named Charles Mccary, who's probably my favorite writer of all time. And his books they're spy thrillers, they're historical, they're loaded with plot. I've read them more than I've read anything else, and I couldn't tell you what any one of them is about. I couldn't tell you what the plot intricacies are, but I can tell you anything that you would want to know about the main character, because that's what sucked me in, and that's what sustained me through reading 18 novels. And I'll keep reading those 18 novels. It's that character. It's all those characters. Yeah,
you're giving me goosebumps here, because I literally just went through this with John Connolly. Mm-hmm. He has the Charlie Parker series, and Charlie Parker has two not sidekicks. I don't want to reduce them to that, but there's two people that are constantly helping him out. It's Angel and Louie. They're married, and they're very, very interesting. They act like a married couple. Anyways, but I couldn't tell you right now what any of those books are about, except for the last one that I just got through, finished reading. But I can tell you almost word for word some of the dialogue between the characters, or the characters' idiosyncrasies, or any of those things, because I know these people so well. And it doesn't matter what the hell kind of trouble they get into. I just want them to get into trouble so that they can come together. Right. Because otherwise they don't really interact much with each other. So when they do come together, I'm like, hell yeah. And they're always the highlight of the book. And again, it just comes down to character. I don't have any other follow-ups for that one. So are you cool with moving on with the next question? Please. All right. So this one is near and dear to my heart, because editing and rewriting and trimming and adding and all that stuff, that's my favorite part. It only takes me, and this isn't bragging, all I do is write. All I do is read and write. It takes me, on average, no more than 2 weeks to finish a novel. A day or two to finish a story. Well, that's all I do, man. I don't have any other job. It's all I do, and I tell people this all the time. Never judge your own output based on the metric of mine, ever, because it's literally all I do, and mainly because I'm stuck in bed most of the day because of my back, which we discussed, and most of my followers know about this. So the editing process is the most fun for me, because I get to clarify and get everything out that I need, that I can make sure that I'm saying exactly what I want to be saying, unlike now where I'm stumbling all over myself and, I might start rambling or whatever. That's where the beauty of writing, really attracts me, because it's all practice until you hit publish, or until you, submit and somebody publishes for you. So question number 4 is, what's your editing process?
Yeah, I know you disclaimed that with not to judge myself against that metric, but that is very impressive. Respect.
Well, thank you.
I like editing too, and the reason I like editing is because it's not writing, and writing is really hard. And for me, I think I take so long with drafting, for better or worse. So a novel, okay, if it takes me 3 years to write a novel draft, I'm not going to be ready to edit it clearly until another year has passed, like almost minimum, almost all the time. And the reason for that for me is because to edit well my own work, I need objectivity. And the only way that I can achieve objectivity is distance, and the only thing that creates distance is time. So I wish that wasn't the case. I wish that I could, just be a workman and just get shit done quickly. And sometimes I can. Sometimes I can get lucky, and it'll be months instead of years. But those tend to be simple stories, and I like simple stories, so there's nothing wrong with that. But I think my default mode is I need time, and time, I've learned, is a tool. That's a tool in my toolbox, and so I think I don't know when I concluded that about myself, but it was probably in graduate school where I was like, okay, like I don't trust my reactions if the work is fresh, because I'm too close to the raw material of it.
Yes.
When you get that contact high, or I do anyway, and I'm not stronger than that contact high, and like I've got stars in my eyes, and I'm like, okay, well, is this going to the New Yorker or the Paris Review first? And and it's just garbage, right? And so I need that time. Now, what you said earlier rings very true to me. The editing process is kind of sacred, because that's your opportunity to shape the work. A friend of mine once said that writing is thinking, and I really don't think I agree. Writing, for me anyway, is not thinking. Writing is craft, practice, and so if drafting is thinking, maybe okay, I could maybe meet there. Yeah. But in the editing process, like that's where you're shaping. That's where you're doing as much of the work.
Well, here's something from Stephen King. A rough draft is, or writing the first draft is you telling yourself the story.
Right.
Also, he talks about what you were just talking about taking so much time away from the piece that you can be objective about it. He suggests in On Writing, his memoir that kind of masquerades as a book on writing. It's more a story about himself. But in there, he goes into great detail about, you write something, you put it away for 6 months, and maybe after those 6 months, you can come back and it feels like someone else wrote it. And after 6 months, especially for me, I'm not sure if that's long enough for you, because we've already talked some, but after 6 months, man, I go back and I look at a piece and I'm like, oh yeah, I've either grown or changed my style completely at that point, so I can read it as if it's someone else, so I can be objective, like you said. Yeah. Nice. Go ahead. I just wanted to throw that out there.
I read On Writing recently, this year. And it was so fantastic. It's such a great book, and King's voice. I didn't realize this, but King's voice. I mean, like he's just like, I want him to be my grandfather so bad, like just teach me.
Uncle Stevie.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's just so encouraging, and nothing he says in that book seems out of reach, which is so weird, because like he's the guy. And for him to break it down and to make it all seem so accessible and approachable, I mean, like, could there be anything more encouraging? But I agree, and I remember that point as well. Yeah, like the fact that he kind of supports that notion of like, yeah, create some distance, whether it's 6 months or whatever.
One of my favorite pieces of advice he's ever given anybody is the advice he gave Neil Gaiman. Neil Gaiman was struggling to write a big novel. He wanted to write a chunker. And this is before he had written American Gods. And Stephen King told him, if you sit down and write 300 words a day, by the end of a year, you're going to have 150,000. I don't know if the math's right there, so don't quote me, but you're going to have a novel. And I think I did the math at one point in time. It's about 150,000 words. Yeah. So he's got a lot. He has a lot of advice for authors. It's like he really knows how to speak to the ones who struggle. The ones who have a problem with it. Just like another part in On Writing, he says, if people always ask me all the time, will you read my stuff and tell me if I'm talented? He says, the way I can tell if you're talented is if you sent someone a story and they bought it and the check cleared. Right. That's one of my favorite. I could sit here all night going through On Writing, but I agree. He speaks like like a parent or an uncle or a grandfather or whatever it might be. Yeah. And he doesn't speak down to you. He's like, come on over here, let me tell you a story, and maybe you learn something from it.
Yeah. There's I'm never going to remember where I read this, and maybe somebody knows this, but there was one anecdote that he gave. I don't think it's in On Writing. It's in something where he talks about how in his early career, he got a check and he used it on pizza and beer, and he had his buddy over, and he was talking about, like, hey, this is pretty cool. Like, I just got paid for, this story or whatever. And the buddy was just a dick about it. And he was like, you wrote that story at a loss. Like, if you total up all the hours that you spend, like, thinking about it, working on it, da 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 da. And eventually, King gets to the point of like, no, the buddy doesn't get it. Like, there's way more to it than that. Like, this is a thing that it's yes, it's a craft, yes, it's a business, but it's an art. Like, the people that are going to do it, that want to do it, they know it, and it's almost like it's like a magnetic pull. It's like being born with like great basketball skills. Like, you're just gonna play basketball. Like, that's just what it is. Like, maybe that's the purest expression of yourself for whatever reason. So for me, like, I get encouraged when I think of the greats that just break it down and just say, like, look, like, you're gonna if you're gonna do this, if you die unsung, then, like, so be it, but at least you had the pleasure of pursuing your craft and being diligent about it. And so I think that's the kind of, I don't know, respect that I want to approach this with. I don't want to be precious about it. It's fun. I read for entertainment and I write for entertainment. But I think by and large, all of my favorite writers are also very craft conscious, and they come at it with a certain level of respect.
And I know I look for good writing also. That's but I think I don't harp too much on good writing because I think if you're nailing character, pacing, and dread, you're writing good stuff. But I do love a good description. If you can make me see something within one sentence, I think that comes down to pacing. If you can, there's a line in Isaac Marion's Warm Bodies, which is so much better than the movie. The movie's good too. It's a lot of fun, but the book is, as usual, it's much more. It's more in depth, and it means a lot more. And there's one line in there that I remember almost perfectly, and that is, her hair was like a hurricane-tossed palm tree. And just in that one line, you see that perfectly. You see the spikes, the fronds, you see the hair going wild. It may be blowing all in one direction because of hurricane force winds. You even see maybe, like skin tone, or there's so much stuff that you can see just with that one line, and that's all he says about her. That is it.
Such economy.
Yes, exactly. An economy of words. I'm a huge fan of authors who are deceptively simple.
Yes.
Like Stephen King, Jack Ketchum. Holy shit. That guy was. He could say so much with a sentence. He could rip your heart out your chest with a sentence. It's just absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
But anyways, that's my diatribe off on that. Is there anything else that you want to get back to, or anything else that you want to talk about with the editing process?
No. That was fun. I know we got way off track, so it's a good sign.
No, that's fine. That's part of the fun of these things. We don't have any real rules or anything. We just talk, and whatever happens naturally. That's why I'm using this template. Usually, I hate template interviews, but these are so vague that I feel like I can build off them, and it's working so far. So I'll probably refine it. I'm bad with that word. Refine it later on, but right now I think these 5 are working.
It's a good
so thank you. So what we're going to do is I'm going to ask Lane one more question, and if any of you guys, if you want to get your questions ready for Lane or for me, we're talking about writing tonight. We got to stay on theme because this is an actual episode from the desk. We're talking about writing. If anybody wants to ask any questions of either one of us, then you can start posting them and I will go through them. But this is the last question. Who are some of your inspirations? I know you've already talked about one in depth, but yeah, give me all your inspirations.
Yeah. So my current triumvirate is Benjamin Percy, Danielle Trussoni, and Max Brooks. And I think the reason that they're the consistent go-tos for me is because they're really good examples of craft conscious writers who write work that is deeply entertaining and also intellectually stimulating. And so I'll use Max Brooks as an example. Everybody, if you know Max Brooks, you know him as the author of World War Z, which is great. And but he's he's a wildly intelligent guy, like a deeply intimidatingly intelligent person. I watch him on YouTube. Any clip that you can get is going to be amazing. And
yeah, he shares his father's intellect. His father was so funny because Mel Brooks is hilarious, but he's also a super smart dude. And I'm glad to see Max doing well with his imagination.
Yeah, no, it's incredible, and like he can talk about any topic at length. He's so informed, and it's not because I don't know if he's a genius or not, but you can tell that he's put in the hours, and that's true for Danielle Trussoni and Benjamin Percy as well. Is that like, yeah, they're writing about ghosts or gunfights or whatever, and like all the fun stuff, which I love. Like that's why I'm reading it in the first place, probably. But beneath all that, you can just tell that they care and that they've done the work and that they've put in the hours. And so, like, Max Brooks, if you have any questions about the history of germ warfare, he'll know the answer because he's done the research. Danielle Trussoni, if you have any questions about like, okay, well, what does the Catholic Church actually think an angel is? She'll tell you because she's done the work. So these are the authors that I like because you can read it for entertainment and it delivers. But if you're looking for work that is craft conscious, that is character driven, and that has an incredible quality of prose, that's there as well. So for me, those are the complete packages. And then we were discussing Stephen King. Stephen King's on my mind a lot right now because up until this year, he was just a weird gap in my reading history. For whatever reason, I just missed a lot of it. Like I knew obviously who he was and I knew the movies and things like that, but like I really couldn't point to any novel of his that I'd actually read. And so that's the thing that I've been very focused on correcting this year. And so I've just read a ton of Stephen King this year and it's been phenomenal. And for the reasons we discussed earlier, it's so easy to see why he's as celebrated as he is. It's the ghosts and the hauntings and all that stuff is amazing, but it's character, right? It's voice and character for me. Like I just finished The Shining, and like whatever I thought The Shining was before finishing it, it wasn't that. It's a story about a guy's alcoholism. Yeah. And like what a complete story it is. So I don't know. For me, it's been kind of like a personal renaissance, discovering this guy that everybody else already knows.
It's extremely cool to come across someone who does have that gap, because so often I run into, and Stephen King fans are the most opinionated fans you're going to find anywhere. I think the only fans that are more passionate are probably the Twilight fandom. As far as Stephen King, man, he writes such eclectic, diverse stories. There's something for everyone. Yeah. So you get into a talk with somebody like Dane Cobain. On Dane Reed's is a channel on here, and I've spoken to Dane several times. Dane can't stand it when he goes supernatural, and I know there's a lot of people out there that feel that way. And me, if there's just like Billy Summers recently, his newest one doesn't have anything. Well, spoilers, I guess, but it doesn't have anything supernatural in it. It's a very basic story, and that's one of the reasons why I didn't like it. Especially since it didn't have any. It does have, oddly enough, it has a lot of stuff about the Overlook Hotel from The Shining and Sidewinder, Colorado. Oddly enough, that's all stuff in there. But that's like the only hint of anything being supernatural in this book, and it's very, very small, very, very short content. Yeah. Just short little injections of, this is here, that is there, that kind of thing. So yeah, it's always a pleasure to come along someone who's either starting their journey or has just started their journey into the Stephen King fandom, because I get a lot of flack for not liking some of his quote unquote best novels. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I would imagine that that's very excusable because I mean the guy's so prolific. Like, take your pick, right? Like, it's like saying that, like, I've got really strong opinions about Batman. Like, well, which Batman? The character's been around for 80 years, right?
Right, exactly.
Choose your arrows.
Right. We do have. Actually, let's finish up this discussion, the Stephen King discussion, real quick. But it's exactly like what I said and what you just said. He has so many books, and you have so many people who have a different version of Stephen King in their head. You got druggy King fans who will refuse to read anything after he kicked the drugs and the alcohol. They refuse to. They say that he's utter garbage nowadays. I'm not a new Stephen King fan, but I'm a fan of new Stephen King. I love the way he's writing. He's writing anything he wants to, even whether it's hot garbage or, whether it's a super cool idea, he's writing everything that he wants to write. And I respect that. Even if I don't like the books, I expect the experimentation because he's 70 years old and he's still trying new things. You got Dean Koontz been beating the same dead horse for the past 30 years, but Stephen King is now writing about assassins and, murder mysteries and things. I mean, come on. And but at the same time, it's still Stephen King. And then you got the ones who think everything after his car accident was garbage, that he lost something special. I think for the first 3 books that he published after that, I mean, I call that the trilogy of trash. Dreamcatcher. It's
Is Dreamcatcher in there?
Yeah, Dreamcatcher, Cell, and From a Buick 8. Those, not in that order, but that's the trilogy of trash for me. Those are probably my most hated up until Billy Summers. I really didn't like Billy, but we're not going to get into that. But and then you have people like me who think, his more literary stuff is better because he's not focusing so much on the horror anymore. He's giving us some of his best characters he's ever written, period. Lisey and Lisey's story, that entire novel is just about this one woman who was the spouse of an author. And the whole reason he wrote it is because there was the accident, and Tabitha thought he was going to die because he was so damn banged up. He was basically a bag of pickup sticks. He got hit by a van coming around the corner doing like 45 miles per hour. Knocked him into the woods. So she thought she was going to lose him, and he got to thinking, what would happen if I died? Tabby would have to answer all these interviews, do all this stuff, all this crazy, all this nonsense because I was a damn fool. And I was out walking maybe a little bit in the road and I got hit by a van. I think his new stuff is so much more heartfelt than his old stuff. His old stuff, he had great characters. Don't get me wrong. Lewis Creed is one of my favorite characters of all time. That's Pet Sematary. That book absolutely destroys me. And then you got Annie Wilkes. A fantastic, diverse character, the antagonist from Misery, of course. But nowadays, man, I mean, he's giving me some choice content as far as stories to read about. Unfortunately, he still writes kids as if it's the 1950s. So, the kids don't talk like kids these days. But I've beaten that. I've beaten that criticism by just reading all of his books as if they're set in the 1950s. I don't pay attention to technology in King books whatsoever. So what's your favorite Stephen King book? And then we'll get to the questions. Yeah. What's your favorite Stephen King book that you've read so far?
Well, thank you for asking. I guess the correct answer is The Shining. So I've read in the last year, I've probably read 6 or 7, and The Shining, I think, is probably the most searing. However, did you read Dr. Sleep?
I've read all of his stuff multiple times. Okay. His entire catalog, I've read it. I've read every single novel except for the newest ones. In the past 5 years, I've read every single one of his novels 3 times.
What did you think of Dr. Sleep?
Dr. Sleep, for me, being I think the book lacks tension, and that's all. That's it. My one criticism is I was never worried about Dan, and I was never worried about Abra. Other than that, I loved everything about Danny's rehab, his afterlife, all that stuff, or his not afterlife, but his recovery life. Right. All that stuff really spoke to me on a personal level because I'm a recovering addict, right? So. But I gave it 3 stars, and I think I'm sticking to my guns with that one because I've read it twice, 2 more times since it came out. But there's something missing in that book. I don't know what it is. People joke all the time that Joe Hill, is writing Stephen King books now. That's why he doesn't publish, much under. King is writing his own stuff. I hate to tell tell you guys that he's actually still doing it. He does get a lot of help from his son, Joe Hill, but there was something Stephen King missing from the second half of that book, and I don't know what it is. I still haven't been able to put my thumb on it. But yeah, that's my feelings. Go ahead and say whatever you're going to say about it.
So you're more informed than I am because I'm not even done with the book, but I'm about halfway through, and what is striking to me about the book is that it was one of these moments in my reading life where I actually like set it down and I was like, holy shit, like I don't think I've actually ever encountered these villains before. Like this is something new, and I was really impressed by that. And so the fact that, like, 70 years old or whatever, and you guys have like nobody needs us to recommend, oh hey, check out this Stephen King guy. He's
right.
But like, to me, that was so impressive. Like, what an achievement just to do something new and to deliver something like, and I'm sure that there are people who were like, no, I've seen that before. I hadn't seen that before. And it was, I can't think of the character's name, but the woman that's in charge, the Rose.
Yeah. Rose the Hat. Yeah.
Rose the Hat. Like, can I work for her? Like, I want to join her cult. I would love to report to Rose. Like, anyway, it so like that was one where I like kind of like stopped and just like did like a fist pump, like, hell yeah, dude, like this is awesome. And those moments, like, that's what keeps me doing this, right? Like,
Right.
So anyway,
I get you. It's funny because I knew that bit about you wanting to be on Team Rose because I went and stalked your timeline a bit, and you had a tweet in there because I was trying to get to know you vicariously, So I saw that tweet and I was just nodding. And now here's the key. Like you said, you were going to have people out there, and I'm about to do it to you, who say, "Oh, I've seen it before." But the kicker is, Stephen King's done it before. So that's the place where where I think another thing with me knowing that Abra and Dan were overpowered by comparison, because I know what these creatures are capable of. Because you're going to run across these you're going to, like the True Knot. They're a type of creature from the Dark Tower series. So yeah, he hasn't been. It's not so much. It's not like Dean Koontz reusing the same golden retriever over and over and over again. It's not like that. It's he falls in love with certain ideas, and he wants to. Here's a perfect example of Stephen King falling in love with an idea and never letting it go, or eventually letting it go. So the Dark Half has a character named Thaddeus Beaumont. His name's Tad, whatever. That character. Let's talk about that novel just real quick. I'm not going to do spoilers, but it is about a man with an alter ego where his pen name comes alive and tries to kill him. Very basic setup, very awesome book. At the same time, when he got done with that one, he was writing Secret Window, Secret Garden, which is about a man who is being accused of stealing this other dude's writing. Now, I can't go into spoilers, but these two books are basically twins. They're basically the same exact story. Just one of them is set in reality, and one of them has supernatural aspects. But then he went on to write about Thad in 3 other books where he wasn't even a main character or a character in the book. And he tells the rest of Thad, I don't even know what to call him, Thad's story in those 3 books until Thad's eventual death in a book that has nothing to do with Thaddeus Beaumont. I love that about him, and that's why I do the Thursday Theorist show. I don't know if you're aware of it or not, but I go through and I connect every single one of Stephen King's books to each other and to the Dark Tower. Because Dark Tower is his magnum opus. It's everything ties back to the Dark Tower. Even in something like Misery that has absolutely no connections whatsoever, you still have something like a very weird saying, like, unless he was off the beam. Okay, that's not a saying that's, in our world. That's not a popular saying. That's a Stephen King saying from the Dark Tower, because there's certain beams that hold up the wheel, life and story and everything is a wheel, and the different beams are the spokes of the wheel, and the Dark Tower is the center. I guess the axle that it turns on. But when you say, I'm sure other people have seen something like that, I can't help but smile, because, I've read them all multiple times. And I that's one of the things that I love about Stephen King is the fact that he ties all of this stuff together.
He's committed.
Let's go to chat because people have been waiting. We only got about 10 more minutes roughly, and I want to get these. So Spooky Noodles, my friend Nick, that's Spooky Noodles, that's the same person. Nick is Spooky Noodles, wants to know favorite books. He knows mine, so I'm going to ask. My favorite book of all time is Stephen King's It. So why don't you tell us if you can pick one? I know a lot of people can't. If you can pick one, what's your favorite book you have ever read?
I mentioned this author earlier. His name is Charles Mccary. He's not well known. I'm
gonna write that down. I'm not ignoring you.
Yeah, no, it's worth writing down. I highly recommend it. I talk about this guy a lot. He was writing literary spy novels from the 70s onward, and they should be much more loved and more well read than they are. But the first proper novel in his sequence with the main character that kind of follows carries the series is called The Tears of Autumn. And it's about the JFK assassination, but like what we were discussing earlier, it could be about anything. It's about the character.
You said Tears of Autumn?
Tears of Autumn, yes.
Gotcha. Okay.
And it's one of these books where it's like the whole series is incredible, but I know I will be reading that book for as long as I'm capable of reading.
Very, very cool. I'm going to look it up just because you're so passionate about it. You've been talking about Mccary. You talked about it. I gotta see what all the fuss is about. So next one, Nick also wants to know about what do you think about content editing? I don't know if he wants my opinion on it. I think everything should be content edited. I think you need as many people. I mean, even if it's just a crew of beta readers, but developmental edits are super important. Yes, you know what your story, how you want the story. You wrote it. You know what you want. Your final draft before it goes to editing is exactly what you have in your brain. But I still recommend going for a content edit or at least beta readers. That's my point of view on it. I think Nick knew that, but I wanted to reiterate just in case. But Lane, how do you feel? What do you think about content editing?
Yeah, I totally agree, and I think the value of a third party is not when they tell you that you did a good job. I think the value is when they tell you no. And many of us probably have those relationships where it's like I don't want to send work to this person because I know that they're going to say it's not good enough, and I know that I'm going to agree with them. And that to me is really where the value is, because that's what turns the screws and that's what keeps you going and pushes you beyond, good enough. Like, oh, I did what I set out to do. Having that trusted voice where it's like, I think that this could be better, and you believe them, and you know that they're coming at it from a perspective of objective clarity, and also they want you to do your best, and that's why they're telling you this isn't that.
Right. That we just got through talking about that. I did an interview with 5 other writers last week, or the week before, something like that. Anyways, we discussed that a lot. In fact, Chad Lutsky, he said, and he nailed it, which is if someone reads my work and tells me it's perfect, I never use them as a beta reader again.
Right.
Or a content editor. If a content editor doesn't do there's something wrong with your book. When you are done with it, I don't care how many times you've been over it, there is something wrong with your book. Mm-hmm. Finding those people is super important, those people who are going to be honest with you and tell you maybe it doesn't need to be changed, but it is an issue that they see. Then you have to decide after other, beta readers, or whatever, other people you let read it, if they bring up the same issue that person brought up, then it holds a little more weight and it gets a little heavier until finally you can, chunk it in the trash.
Yeah.
So yes, it's a great. I almost knew what your answer was going to be because you talked about looking at your stuff objectively, and if you're giving yourself, man, you said years space between some stuff. That would drive me nuts. First off, I'm going to tell you that. But everybody's process is different, and that's why I'm doing this show. I want to know what's going on, because I know. There are very few authors who work like me, and there are very few authors who work like you. So getting the one of the things I get all the time is, oh, I wish I could write as much as you. How are you so prolific? So on and so forth. I'm not trying to dismiss that question, but you can't judge anything that you are doing based on the metric of someone else. Because maybe they have more free time. Maybe they have, any number of things. Everybody is different, and it is all subjective. Whatever works for you. That's important.
Could I just build on that real quickly?
Definitely. Go ahead.
So I think I 100% agree with you. And I think it goes back to what we were talking about earlier with engaging with others and being part of a larger conversation and seeking that out. I think if you don't do that, if you are just so confident and so religious about your own vision, then yeah, you might be right. That might get you somewhere. Maybe you are that person who is completely right and doesn't need other voices. I am not that person, and no writer I know I think would claim to be. And I think that can have quite a negative effect. A friend of mine once described it as like, okay, well then what? You just collapse on yourself like a dying star when the work doesn't land, right? And like you're right, but then you die knowing that you were right and everybody else is wrong and they just didn't get it. It's like, okay, well, what was the point of that, right? So exactly. So engaging with others, finding community, finding people who are going to be honest with you and discuss work, and just share your enthusiasms like this, like clearly, like you and I are going to have no problem talking about Stephen King at length or
anything.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's great, because guess what? Like that enriches the experience, right? Like what you shared with me about like the True Knot. Like, okay, like I like the True Knot because Rose is super sexy and they're cool villains.
Yeah.
I don't know these other deeper, connections. And so now you share that with me, it's going to enrich my experience. That's what I'm going to be looking for as I read.
Yeah, and next, if you ever tackle the Dark Tower, man, you're gonna see him and you're gonna be like, yeah, that's what he was talking about.
Right.
And I left enough special that you can. There's so much. It's a very rich fantasy world that he created. I don't like every single book. Yeah. In fact, one of the books in that series is my least favorite book, the worst book I've ever read. I don't want to spoil. It's Wizarding Glass. It's the book in the middle. It's an extended flashback. You can read the description to find that out. But the story is blazing along. You have the Gunslinger. If you do read it, the Gunslinger is an extended prologue.
I just finished the Gunslinger recently.
Yeah, so it is an extended prologue. So if you didn't like anything about it, it's probably because it's literally a prologue for the entire series.
And he even claims that. He even says that that's not the book.
Exactly. And that's how I tell people that people don't like it, because I don't care too much for it. I gave it about 3 stars, 4 stars. It's not great to me, because especially since I've read it so many times and so many different versions of it. There's at least 3 versions of it bouncing around. And the one that I stick to nowadays is, of course, the one that he went back and rewrote to make it fit in with later books. But then you have the drawing of the 3, which is literally a 500-page introduction to the characters you're going to be playing with, the entire series. And then you have the Wastelands. They finally get on the journey. Everything starts moving. The Wastelands is one of my top 5 favorite Stephen King books. And then everything comes to a screeching halt in book 4, and he does a 600-page flashback. Right. And I'm like, oh my God, just get us out of this. Just get us out of here. Why didn't he do this as like a book that's not a number section of it? Anyways, but I was like, I don't need to know all this information about Roland. I don't. He's a mystery for a reason. Anyways,
I think that's a common criticism. I've heard that before, not for that particular book, but like the indulgence. And I mean, even he talks about that. And on writing, I forget the example, but like there are, I think it was Lacey's story actually, where he talks about how his wife was like, dude, you got to cut like 25% of this. So.
Yeah, he gets stuck in worlds. He gets stuck with characters, and he wants to completely mine them for every ounce of content. Yeah. One of the books that he did this the most with was Insomnia. I love the book. It's one of my favorite Stephen King books. It's in my top 20 easily. But it's a story of this old man, and you're with Ralph very short time. But you get to know this character so well that you just don't want anything bad to happen to him. And bad things just keep on happening. I do want to jump in here and get Bali's question. Balial Salat asks, I'll put this up on the, how do you build relationships with other writers? I'm a reclusive individual, very introverted, and would like to know where to converse with like-minded people and sharpen my writing craft. I will tell you up front, this is hard. This is a very, very difficult question. I've been talking, ever since the internet started, I've been talking to writers, and I still haven't found a home, not really. I have the horror community. I don't mess with hashtag writing community whatsoever. That's the kind of community that pats each other on the back, and they're only about the positive. I hate to tell you all these places to stay away from, but damn near any Facebook writers group, it's the same thing. To be vulgar about it, it's nothing but a circle jerk. Now, as far as meeting writers that you want to associate with, that you either want to learn from or whatever, I highly suggest reaching out to authors that first, that they're available, like me, that kind of deal. You can hit me up on Twitter, you can email me, you can hit me up on YouTube. It doesn't matter. Make sure they're available. Don't go tweeting out to Stephen King, because Stephen King ain't going to answer your tweets. Don't tweet out to Dean Koontz, because he's not going to answer your tweets. You can tweet out to Joe Lansdale, though. Joe Lansdale is going to answer you. There's numerous. You kind of just have to put yourself in a situation where you are around these individuals. And I hate to say it like this, but yeah, give them a stalk. You kind of linger in the background and watch what they're talking about, watch how they interact with each other. That's another great part about the internet, is that you can linger in the background, like, you're lingering in the shadows of the party until you get to know people, and then you just kind of move into. That is literally my only advice, is the things to stay away from, especially authors who just blindly promote everyone. I know we want to be nice. I know we want to be kind, but yeah, guilt by association is a thing for a reason. Unfortunately, people have block lists that if you, and I'm not trying to scare you away, but it's a fact of life when you're in this community. Just make sure that they are accessible and that you have something to ask them, and you're not just wasting their time also, because the bigger names are definitely going to know who to respond to and who not to respond to. But as far as smaller authors, I would just ask questions. But I'm kind of a lone wolf. I know I don't seem that way on Twitter. I know I don't seem like an introvert on YouTube, because but this is nerve-wracking for me. I'm not gonna lie. You guys are looking at me right now. It may seem calm, cool, and collected, but this is absolutely nerve-wracking for me. I always have the thoughts before I come on, before I post a video or this or whatever. I'm like, oh, what if I say something stupid? What if Lane's an asshole? What if all these things, they go through my mind. Oh, I should just cancel. I should make something up and I should just cancel. I have those thoughts. I have those anxieties and all that. So as far as being an introvert, I think the internet is helping a lot of us cope with that, and letting us, approach people that we normally wouldn't be able to approach, like a Joe Lansdale. Other authors that will respond to you, and I'm not telling you to go bombard these people with tweets. Please do not, like, he told me to come talk. No, don't do that. Please don't do that. But Caroline Kepnes is super kind. So is Araminta Hall. There's numerous people. If you want here's a perfect example of where to look. If you want to follow writers who are people that you are going to want to follow, you follow me. So if you trust me, go look at my follow list. Every single one of the people that I follow interacts with me. The only way that you're going to get a follow back is if you interact with me. I don't do follow chains. I don't do follow for follow. I don't do any of that crap, because you end up in the situation that you're in now. You're surrounded by people that either you don't know or that don't give a shit to get to know you. So that's my advice. And I'm going to pass the torch to Lane. Lane, is there anything you want to add to that?
I would say, I don't know your situation, but I would say.
Holy crap! Hang on, I got to stop you for just a second. Derek Jones, thank you so much. He said Derek Jones just gave me $20 and said, "Hey, thanks for the content. Where would you recommend I start with your work?" You talking to Laney? You talking to me, Derek?
to eat.
To me, if you're talking to me, everybody loves Bay's End. Not everybody. People tend to like Bay's End and Life After Dane. Thank you so much, Derek, for the $20. I appreciate that. You didn't have to do that. It's very, very kind of you. Lane, please continue with what you're saying. Hopefully I didn't, both of us? Okay.
Not at all.
I'll answer that in just a second.
I don't know the question asker's situation, but I would say there could be value in looking for something organized. I went through an MFA program, and it was very, very valuable. And I know that's not the case for everybody, and you certainly don't have to invest the time into a full-fledged MFA program. But I don't know, just look in your community. Are there community colleges? Are there writers groups? Just seek out those areas where the work is being done. And you may not find people who are much further down the path than you are, but you will likely find people who are passionate, and you can collaborate and make discoveries together that way. So I would not discount the idea of doing something organized, or at least seeking out some kind of writing program near you.
Fair. Very fair. I will add also another thing to watch out for. I'm more of a cynic. I'm much more of a cynic, but when you're out there and you are going to writers groups, there can be writers groups that are overly critical also, that will completely stomp your heart into the dust. Watch out for those people also. If they don't have anything nice to say, they're probably not people you want to know. But a good writer friend will tell you the ups and downs of your work, the pros and the cons, and it'll be balanced. That's just the kind of thing you're going to have to look for. Now, I answered Derek's question, where to start with my work. Lane, do you want to give him some recommendations where to start with your work?
I just put up a very crappy website, lanetalbot.com. And again, I'm just trying to get into this idea of, being conversant. And so the website itself has a list of my publications that are still available online. I would check that out. And to E's point, say hi on Twitter, and I would love to be conversant that way.
Yeah, Derek, aren't you on I believe Derek Jones is on Twitter. So if you follow Lane, you guys can work out, the website and everything. And his website is in his bio. Mm-hmm. Give us your @ if you want to. Well, I'll type it down here as you tell me, because I don't have it on hand at the second.
I don't even know if I have it on hand. It's @Lane_Talbot.
There you go, Derek. So check out if you go over to Lane's Twitter page. I know for a fact because that's where I stalked him. No, I'm kidding. But it's his website is in his bio. So definitely check that out. Yeah, you can find Lane on Twitter @Lane_Talbot. I have put it down here in the chat for everybody. Is there any place else that you want to plug, Lane?
I set up a Medium account. I've got 1 follower, so if you want to be follower number 2, I'll slip you $20. I'm following your you and I. You're a great example, and you're somebody that I found organically. Like, I wasn't looking for writing influencers or anything like that.
That's cool.
Kind of following the conversation, and I don't even know if you know this. We didn't talk about this, but you and I had an exchange about, of all things, the last Terminator movie a couple months ago. Yeah, just that random, whatever. You posted my comments, and then all of a sudden, it was back and forth about just a random kind of crappy action movie. Okay. Yeah. So, but I think that's a great example, right? And so, now here we are, a couple months later, having a conversation like this. Yeah. So, I'm very new to this idea of participating in a community digitally like this, but already it's bearing fruit. I love this conversation. I look forward to reading more of your work. I don't have a very strong online presence right now. I would like to remedy that, but that is secondary to the idea of engaging with the community that already exists.
You just reminded me of something I wanted to actually cut you off about earlier. I'm glad you mentioned that. I don't know why this popped back into my head now. I have no idea. But earlier we were talking about how long you take in between, after finishing a draft and then going back and working on it. I have two examples of authors who are not on social media at all whatsoever, and they only publish a book every 7 years. That's Donna Tartt and Thomas Harris.
You were going to say that, actually.
Donna Tartt and Thomas Harris. Those two, neither one of them are on social media. Donna Tartt only does a handful. I think she only does one. I could be wrong. Only one interview to promote her book, and people have to bid on that interview. Another thing with Thomas Harris is, and it can be said that he's not writing great fiction anymore, but I don't know. I haven't read Kari Mora, and I didn't like Hannibal Rising or whatever that was. It felt like a movie tie-in book, which is weird because, he wrote these characters. But I digress. These two authors have made, and of course they became famous before the internet took off. I have to add that also. But these two authors don't interact with anyone whatsoever. They have their own little circles. From what I understand is Donna Tartt doesn't even leave her house. So other than, she's a recluse. Same goes for Thomas Pynchon. He's a very prolific author of massive books that are about almost nothing at all. They're postmodern fiction. That's the point of postmodern fiction, is you go down paths that have nothing to do with plot. And you ride the characters, and whatever happens, and then the book ends and you go on about your business. But all these authors take so long to write a book, and they're also not on social media. They're not out there in writers groups or any of that stuff. They did go to school for writing. So you could say that, that it was their only real experience with networking and that kind of thing. Do I think any of us are going to get that lucky that we can just go off and be recluses? No, that's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying there is a chance, there is a hope for us introverts, that one day maybe we can be out of the limelight and just sheltered away in our bunker writing our stories. That's like the dream for me. I'm not a red carpet guy. I don't do awards. In fact, anytime anybody tries to put up any of my stuff for awards, I decline respectfully and politely. I'm just not in it for that kind of thing, I just wanted to kind of end on that note. If you're an introvert and you are not, you can't bring yourself to interact even with people online, that's not a bad thing. And it doesn't mean that your work is bad because you haven't interacted with all these writers. For the first couple of years of my career, I didn't interact with any other writers whatsoever. I despised communities. I've since changed, and I've grown. I've tried doing better all over, with everything in my life. But I made a name for myself without interacting or networking whatsoever. And to this day, I really don't network all that much. That's why I've started doing the live shows with more than just me. I want to be able to talk to you guys, and it's not about networking or that's very important to me, that I talk to authors that, are well below, my following numbers or my reader numbers or any of that bullshit. It's very important to me to talk to people that don't have a whole lot of published. And I also want to talk to people who are even more prolific than I am, because I want to know how there are some authors, I don't know how the hell they do it. I think Armand Rosamia, I think that's how you pronounce his name. He comes out with a new book like every month. I don't know how the hell he does that. But he's probably the most prolific in this. I don't have any connection with him whatsoever. I just know that he's always coming out with something new. But there is hope. I want to end on that note. There is hope, even if you can't find people to talk to. Seek out readers. Seek out, the people, your target audience. Get to know these people, because that's what I did the first couple of years. You look at my reviews on Goodreads, which all the bad ones are still up. All the ones that I made a name for myself with, they're all still up. And I did that to connect with readers, because I didn't feel like writers were my home base. I wanted to talk to readers, people who are going to be reading, and of course, a lot of writers are readers, and they become fans of your work also. But I really wanted to connect with the people that were in the streets, as it were. I wanted to jump in there, and I wanted to talk to these people who were readers, because that's where my money was going to come from. I want to get to know these people. I'm not a people pleaser, but I look to see what they liked, what they didn't like. And I use that. And I'm not talking about in reviews of my books, in their reviews of other people's books. Reading reviews is a great way. Don't listen to everybody. I need to put that out there. But reading reviews is a great way to learn what you're doing right and what you're doing wrong. If you read enough reviews or listen to enough reviews on YouTube or Twitter or wherever you consume your reviews, if you listen to that enough, you are going to find things that the majority of people don't like, or the majority of people do like. And then you can kind of hone your stuff. I'm not saying be a people pleaser, but you can kind of hone yourself to where it's more commercially viable. Elaine, is there anything you want to add here before we call it a night?
Just I could build on that a fraction of an iota, and I would just say that to your point, I think community is valuable, talking to people is valuable, getting feedback is valuable, but you have to have something for people to react to. And having work and having the hours dedicated to that work is a requisite. Because without that, I would think it would be announced. You can participate in conversation, sure, but I mean, if you're writing, and if you want to be a writer, like those hours in the chair, those hours alone doing the work, there's no substitute for that.
Yeah, writers write. That's it. And that's why it was important to me to talk to people who might not even be published. So I'm sure we'll get to some point. I know I have at least 2 people coming up. Every single Sunday, we are going to be doing this show. Well, I'm going to be doing this show. Lane will not be the co-host.
I'll be watching.
Lane will be watching. But I'll have a new author every Sunday. I'm just trying to get as much information as possible, because the number one comment that I get on my stuff is, where's your writing advice column or whatever, and I don't really have it. Everything I have said that I want to say is in my old From the Desk videos. And now I'm going to start asking everyone. I'm not. Yes, you are published. You have but even though it's indie published, you are published. Anyways, Nick needs a little more self-confidence, brother. I'm just going to throw that out there. Stop talking about yourself like that. You're a published author, man. Get it? Yeah. Anyways, I'm not going to harp on you, but we're going to be doing these every Sunday. Next week, I have an author named Jamie. I'm not going to go look, but and then every single week after that. Also, Lane doesn't know anything about, well, you might have read my post on Twitter. I'm going to be starting Friday nights at 7 p.m. I won't be on social media answering emails. I won't be here on YouTube or anything, reading YouTube comments until Sunday at 7 when I start the show. I'm going to start giving myself some me time. I haven't taken a real vacation or given myself a day off in probably a decade. Even when I went to Scares That Care, which I didn't really go, I just went to meet friends. It was still, about everyone else. And I'm going to start taking some time to myself and not do anything from 7 o'clock on Friday to 7 o'clock on Sunday. But that's where we're going to wrap it up. Unless, Lane, do you have anything else you want to say?
Thank you. You're the man. I really appreciate it. This was an awesome conversation. Pleasure to be a part of it.
Thank you. Thank you so much for stopping by, Lane. Kaiju, thank you so much. Right at the end here, another $10. Thank you, guys. I'm glad that you guys like this show that much. It means a lot to me, and I hope to do loads and loads more of these. Like I said, every Sunday. But it's time for the outro. Everything must end. So until next time, I have been E, you have been you. That's been Lane. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.
Thank you.